They call it a MacGuffin, or a recurring motif. It's an object, device, or event that is necessary for your characters and serves as a bit of a jumping off point for the main plot of your narrative. In the end, that object may mean nothing, but to us as dungeon masters, it may have some sentimental value. Today I want to talk to you about my recurring motif, what Dungeon Master Brad's trademark item is, and how it has affected my players for nearly a decade. This is a music box, and it's kind of a physical representation of an artifact that I made that was gifted to me by my fiancé. On the front she had engraved, "You do not know the first notes of the music that moves me," which is a quote that I really like by Patrick Rothfuss. When my fiancé gave me this item, I nearly burst out into tears because, one, I'm a big softie, and two, it really meant a lot because, like I said, it's a physical representation of an item that I made in my game that has really affected the way that I've written my lore even now 10 years later, as I'm still playing kind of in the same set of worlds that I've been writing in for the last decade. When I was creating the music box that I would later call the Music Box of Ascension, it was because of my fascination with the Deck of Many Things. When I was a kid and learning how to play this game, one of the most fun things that I found within it was nights where we were running things like one-shots or short adventures or little mini-campaigns where the Dungeon Master would pull out a deck of cards and begin to shuffle it behind the DM screen. I would get so excited once I figured out what this deck could do, and I can still kind of remember the first time that I drew from it, or watched someone draw a card and get wishes, or have their soul be ripped from their body, or we'd have to fight death head on, things of that nature. The Deck of Many Things is a very chaotic item, like I said, that can really derail a campaign, but at the same time it's a tool that Dungeon Masters can use where they can kind of tailor the deck or what's in it to help motivate their narrative to whatever purpose or end they're looking for. When I first introduced the Music Box of Ascension, it was just that chaotic item in the middle of a side quest where my players were in the middle of a swampy marsh and they ran across a lich. At the time, I kind of wrote it in to be the lich's phylactery that was stolen by an ancient blue dragon. There was a bit of a protector of the area that this lich was inhabiting. My players agreed to parlay with this lich instead of trying to fight it because they were lower level, and all that she wanted was this item returned. Though she didn't specifically describe it, she just said that there was an item or artifact of great power within this dragon's lair, and sent the party out to retrieve it. The party, of course, being made up of a lot of noble clerics and paladins and the like, just with the nature of the campaign that I was running, were not very eager to return some powerful object to a lich. And they actually communed with the dragon, though he was a bit angsty in his old age, and a fight did ensue, and eventually they would leave that lair with the music box. The lich did show up in that moment, and it kind of sparked a battle between the dragon and it, allowing my players enough time to get away. And it worked out for me because, as I said, I was really curious to see if the music box would end up in their hands and if they would take it throughout their adventures. Over the next several months in game, the girl that took the item and put it into her pack and kind of forgot about it, all of a sudden, every now and again, the key would turn and music would begin to play and minor magical things would happen. Small things at first, just like time would all of a sudden go ahead a few hours. Night would come sooner. Sporadic weather events and the like. But then it started to slowly attune to her over time, and she started to kind of have this sense of dread within her. The box would try to reach out and speak to her at times. And then all of a sudden, when that key would turn and the music would begin to play, she would begin to summon creatures from across the planes of my world. Sometimes they were minor things, but other times it would get a little interesting. One of the first major creatures she summoned was a devil, I believe, if I can recall, about a decade ago as it was. And it really kind of got the point across that this box had some kind of unnatural and immense power. I used the box for a long time there, and it was kind of in the middle of the campaign where the kind of MacGuffin thing comes in. At the time, I guess, it was affecting the party outright, but it really kind of set up the lore and the story that I wanted to work toward the latter half of my campaign. It really was the jumping off point. And at the time, like I said, I made it, and I didn't really have any big lore impact to it. I just introduced a lich, and this was its phylactery. But then, because when I would turn the key, or play it back then, play the sound of a music box, my players would just freak out. They would be excited, but also terrified to see what was about to happen. And I was a lot younger then, and kind of homebrewing my first world. And I was starting to get into the habit of kind of writing more immense lore to kind of let my players dive into. And what I decided to do was kind of make this box the catalyst for the creation of the first world that I ever made. And I'm not going to go into super big, in-depth detail about the whole story, but the short of it is that my worlds encapsulate a cycle called the Doom Cycle. It's a set of events that happen across time that kind of give my players this grand adventure to always be playing in across the centuries and on different worlds near what I've dubbed the Ascension Star. And essentially what it was is the main creator god of my first world ran away from her old one for a lot of reasons and was very naive and young in her power of creation. And she wanted to create a world that was modeled after her old one that found a very dark and dire end. And every time she would create it, bad things would continue to happen. She would just kind of do something called the sudden sentience, where she would reintroduce life at a certain stage across a mortal's lifespan and just snap her fingers and things would begin anew. But every time things started to go wrong, she would intervene. She was very impatient. So this doomed cycle kept repeating, where a god would create and then meddle in the affairs of mortals, and then bad things would start to happen. As she grew older and watched this and grew very sorrowful, she decided that she was going to do it one more time. Create the world and then trap what was left of herself inside of a music box, because her whole theme was that she sung or sings the world into existence. She creates via song. So the music box was a sentimental toy given to her by her parents when she was very young. So that is what she chose to make, and she hid it within the world. And of course, because we're playing D&D, my players eventually found it. Throughout the rest of the campaign, the music box was just that pivotal piece that I needed to get through my writer's block or brain fog, to kind of find the way forward, to engage my players to where they were having so much fun through the chaos. They went and found out that the creator god's essence was in this box. They found out why it was manipulating time. They found out that she had enacted a divine council who was doing the same thing that she was, interfering in the affairs of mortals. They found out that was the reason behind all of the other chaos that was surrounding them, and they ended up defeating it. And at the end, when they found the essence of the creator god, they found a way to enact a veil around the world to protect it from outside interference. But of course, this is D&D, and throughout the past decade, the influence of this little item has really transcended into a lot of my other worlds and campaigns. And just recently, my players got to hear the turning of a key and the sound of the music box once again. And I'm very excited to see where it'll take us next. But the reason I made this video is quite simple. I like to share stories, and I like to reach out and hear yours. I want to hear about your MacGuffins, your recurring motifs, your thematic things that you go back to that are recurring within your worlds that really engage your players or engage your audience, to those of you that just write stories. I'd love to hear about it. And as I always say at the end of these videos, if you're interested in Dungeons & Dragons, go play some. If you want to run a game, find a group of friends and try it out, because playing D&D is a hell of a good time.